This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the platform to turn your passion into a website. Writing is hard. It's easy to dream of this romantic image of becoming a writer, but then it's another story when you have to actually do it. You have to face the blank page, the frustration, and the doubt. I've been writing in my spare time for as long as I can remember, and in the past year or so I've made it, I guess, my job with the scripts and the newsletter. And even then, with all that experience, it intimidates me every time I sit down to write. I worry with questions like, well, what do I write about? How can I entertain the person reading? Am I waffling? Is this boring? Is this entire piece of work just pointless in the first place? And I'm sure there are issues that you felt in your own writing. And I don't come here with this miracle pill to solve everything, because I don't have it, and no one does. But I want to offer at least one thing that can give you a sense of stability and structure, a foundation to then base great works upon. And before you think, well, hey, who the hell is this guy telling me what to do? There's no worry, because all I want to say is that you should have some sort of writing routine. That's it. The world is chaotic, and we will never be able to live out our ideal week on the calendar with every minute micromanaged to perfection. Responsibilities will pop up, disasters will knock us off our feet, and other people will force their way into our schedule, adding more obligations onto our already long list. All of this is inevitable, no matter who you are in life and no matter how rich or poor you are. But you still want to be a great writer, and that's where this routine comes to save you, because it offers a sense of stability. And even when your daily routine is thrown around, tossed and turned, and completely uprooted, it gives you something to fall back on, so you can get back into the flow and start producing something great again. But what actually is this writing routine? Well, I don't know. I mean, that's up to you to decide, because you are different from me. And what works for you might make me want to quit the craft entirely and just jump off a bridge. We all have our own preferences, strengths, and weaknesses. And the point of this video is not for you to steal my routine as the holy grail of writing, but to be inspired to make your own and make one that serves you. But I still do want to share my routine because I thought it'd be fun. And as you can see here, I've been tracking my writing for quite some time now. And I want to share this routine because it has helped me stay consistent, and it has helped me push through those rough patches and practice my skills. And as you can see, there are many rough patches. So in this video, I want to share with you each part of the writing stage and how I would approach it and what's going on in my mind as I write and try and keep the quality high. Well, first up comes that dreaded question that you have to face every single day. What do I write about? There's literally infinite choices, and it makes it so hard to choose sometimes. And this is especially true when you have lots of different interests, so you feel like you could just jump into anything and get going. Now that's good, but the mistake here is letting that opportunity paralyze you. I know it's overwhelming, believe me, but what else can you do at the end of the day but to pick something? It's better than saying, well, there's too many things to write about, so I may as well just not write at all. I mean, that's such a huge waste of your potential. But what helped me overcome this is saying to myself, well, if I write something about at least one of my interests, then I'm making progress. I'm serving this higher goal. I mean, sure, if I'm writing about literature for a few months, it inevitably means that I'm neglecting my other interests, like history or anthropology. But why should I feel that fear of missing out if I'm still writing about something I love and care about? Like, where's the loss there? Writing is hard enough as it is, and we don't need any of that extra pressure. My approach to coming up with new ideas needs no weird formulas or templates, and despite that, it lets me come up with literally months of exciting things to talk about. Whenever I'm going about my day or writing, and I think of a good idea, I'll put that into a Notion table. And, you know, no shit, of course you do that. But it goes deeper than that, trust me. So in Notion, you can actually open up the cell and it brings up a page. And in there, you can write whatever you want. Now, as I've written that idea, it's not really that useful. At the end of the day, it's just a sentence or a title. And it's not really helpful to me as a writer who wants to expand on that. So what do? With each idea in this table, I'll open up the page and do a brain dump of anything relevant that I think could help me. I'll write down maybe some major points I should include. And oftentimes these will end up becoming subheaders in the final piece, and they'll give me some sense of structure. For example, here I have an idea about how to gamify your learning. And if I click it open, you'll see that I've just dumped some random thoughts I had, and they're very rough. But even these will offer me some direction in starting the piece of writing. However, if I do have more time, then I will make these plans a bit more detailed. For example, it's been quite a while since I made a video on Obsidian. And I thought, why not talk about how you can use it to become an expert in any skill or subject? And as you can see, I've made a really detailed blueprint for my future self. And this will be so helpful down the line when I do come to write it for real. So no matter how rough and sloppy your ideas are, write them down. Because that could be the spark that grows into this great piece of writing, something that you can be truly proud of. Speaking of projects that you can be proud of, Squarespace has recently helped me build a website that just makes me happy every time I open it, because it's so good looking. I'm no graphic designer, but that's okay, because they offer a lot of templates that help you get your artistic vision out of your mind and onto the screen. They even have this cool feature called the Blueprint AI, which helps you guide the design choices, all while it does the heavy lifting for you. And don't worry, because you're not limited to the templates either. With the Fluid Engine, you can drag and drop all of these different features onto your website, so you can customize it exactly how you envision in your head. I also figured out that I can embed my newsletter sign-up form directly into my website. And not only was it surprisingly easy, but it's just super helpful to me as a writer, because I can have it there where I need it. So if you have a vision for your own website, go to squarespace.com and you can use their free trial to design your website. And once you feel ready to launch it, then you can go to squarespace.com/Odysseus and use code Odysseus to get 10% off of your first domain or website. But let's slow down for a second, because we might be getting ahead of ourselves. A lot of these ideas I mentioned, where they just pop into your head randomly, they come after you've already started to write, because then you've had the chance to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and generally just the topics you prefer to talk about. But what if you haven't started writing yet? How do you know what to write about? That's the real sticking point for every new writer. And trust me, I know the pain of inaction. I know the feeling of getting to the end of the day, having made zero progress for your writing because you were just paralyzed. To get around that, there's one good starting point I recommend, and that's to write practical pieces, helping someone achieve something. And that something can be literally anything. There are successful blogs out there with hundreds of articles dedicated to how you can clean your house better, or about the ins and outs of brewing coffee, or even how you can paint Warhammer minis. There's absolutely everything and anything. And all of these have two things in common. First, the writer has achieved something. And the second thing is that the reader wants to achieve the same thing. And they come here to find out how. So you could ask yourself, well, what do I have experience in or expertise? What do I love that I could help others achieve the same thing? And boom, there's your starting point. But I have to stress this first half, that before you write about something, you have to do it in real life. And there's so many frauds out there who write about solutions to problems that they've never dared face in reality. It's easy to trick people online, and you could if you wanted to. But if you want to build something authentic and meaningful, then the change has to happen before you start the writing. It has to happen in real life. It's as Henry David Thoreau said, "How vain is it to sit down to write when you have not stood up to live?" The only reason I'm even slightly comfortable to sit down and talk about reading, for example, on this channel, is because I've had an experience with it. I've had my wins, I've had my frustrations, and I've had the periods where I overcame something. And even if a lot of that experience was failure, or just not special in the first place, it at least gives me some basis. It gives me some weight behind my words. There's 100 different things to write about, and many different ways to get started. But I feel like this is one of the easiest ones because you don't necessarily have to rely on your prose, your grammar, or your overall skills as a writer. Instead, much of the value comes from your experience beyond the writing, within the subject, within the hobby or the interest in real life. And that's why it's so powerful. Anyone can feel confident talking about something that they love. And it's a good place to grow your skills, to grow your confidence, and then maybe branch out to other areas of writing. And so begins the writing. You've got your ideas and you've got some vision of what to talk about. But I don't like jumping straight into the writing. I know it sounds strange, but I was never a big fan of that. In my experience, good writing happens before you've even put down the first word. And with just 5 minutes of preparation beforehand, you can give yourself much more direction in the writing ahead. It's true that without a plan before you write, you might feel more free. But very quickly, that freestyling can degenerate into rambling. And not only does that confuse you, but your reader as well. So just before I start, I like to write a rough structure at the top. And these will usually be the subdivisions of the text, along with some of the main points that I need to hit. I try my best to envision myself as the reader, and I think, what would make the most sense to someone who is new to this topic, and someone who wants to be informed and entertained? For example, I might be writing a newsletter, and I want to use a story to get a point across. And then I want to take that point and somehow apply it to our modern lives. And the question is, do I start with a story and then bridge it to the point? Or do I talk about the problem first, tell people why it's a problem, and then use the story to, hit the message home. All of these questions matter, and all of these differences in structure can separate a good piece of writing to one that flows beautifully and one that really hammers the message. You want to do your best to take your reader on this logical path, a journey that unravels in front of them without too much mental strain on their part. I want to stress that doesn't mean being boring or predictable. It's good to surprise your reader, and it's good to, keep them on their toes. But the point is, above all, be clear. Because just like you, your reader is busy, and they're not going to sit there trying to decode any parts that are vague or rambly to them. Guess what they'll do instead? They'll just click off. So as I write, clarity will always be at the top of my mind, because if something's not clear, then people will just stop reading, and that's the end of it. But let's take a pause from the nitty-gritty of the writing and look at the routine itself. You have a lot on your plate already, I guarantee it. So when and where do you get the time to actually sit down and write? The Sigma Grindset Hustle creators, they say a lot of crap on here, but where I do agree with them is that it's good to block out 1 or 2 hours of time just to focus on work, or writing in this case. I find that my worst enemy is distraction, and not for the obvious reason that it slows you down, but I find it very difficult to get back into the flow once I've been knocked out of it. Personally, I try to write in the morning, but sometimes it's not possible because there's more urgent work to be done. And I'm not going to be naive and say, oh bro, just wake up 2 hours earlier and do your writing then, because that's not realistic. So whenever you write, be it in the morning or after work or even before bed, try to find a period of time that you can reliably keep uninterrupted and free for writing. It may be just half an hour apiece in an otherwise chaotic day, but stretch that over the months and the years, and trust me, great things can happen. Having said that, there is one quirk I want to emphasize, because ever since I added it to my routine, it's helped me get rid of brain fog and also just stir my mind to life when I'm feeling, lazy or sluggish. Back in the day, I pushed through this fatigue in this hopeless effort to increase my productivity. But since then, I've matured a bit and realized that you can only go so far with this hustle culture. At some point, you do have to stop and take a break and recover. Go on a walk, however, and not only will you get to stretch your legs and experience some fresh air, but you'll notice that you come back and your mind is just buzzing to life with creativity. There's no brain fog, there's less fatigue, and you're just more ready to attack the writing again with this renewed energy. It only takes 20 minutes as part of your writing routine. But if you can do it, trust me, it's going to give your writing this new breath of life. I'm a slow writer. It's rare that I sit down and finish a piece of writing there and then. And that's perfectly fine. Just remember that when you return to a piece of writing that's unfinished, it might have been days, even a week since you've last seen it. And that time is long enough for you to have forgotten what you're writing about, and you've completely lost your rhythm. It's like when you take a break from a novel. Once you come back, you realize that you don't really care about the story anymore, and you've lost touch with the characters, and they don't mean anything to you. The same thing happens on the other end of the text, as the writer. So I recommend, before you keep writing, always reread what you've already written, and that gives you the time to readjust yourself and get back into the flow of things. And we finally arrived at my favorite stage of the writing, because this is where it actually gets good. This is where all the doubt and the insecurity gets replaced with something you can be proud of. This is where it's time to edit. Once I finish writing, I'll close my computer and go and do something else, and I'll forget about it. I will only edit at least a few hours after finishing the writing, preferably the next day. And this gives me the time to forget the writing, at least enough so that I can get a fresh perspective once I come back to it. This time difference is important because it gets rid of some of that hindsight that you have, and it lets you approach your work more objectively and more akin to how the reader would see it. Sometimes you'll revisit a work from, yesterday or 2 days ago, and you'll think, what the hell was I thinking here? Why did I write that? Or why did I use this stupid example? Or why did I think that sentence was good? It lets you be honest with yourself, and you can cut out all of the crap that you didn't need. There's 3 main corrections I make when I edit. And the first is that I try to sharpen up my sentences. During the first draft, it's easy to add lots of pointless words and all this extra fluff that kind of dilutes the message, and you don't need half of it. So during the edit, I will try and shorten sentences, or get rid of any clunky words, or maybe fiddle around with the grammar so that the sentences flow better and pack a punch. The second thing is to make sure the writing makes sense from start to finish. When you write about a topic you love, it's easy to be selfish, and completely by accident. There's no bad intentions, but you might assume that the reader knows more than they do, and that they share your exact understanding. But that is often not the case. Something that is obvious to you might be completely new to someone else, and you just struggle to see that relationship. It might also be that you know exactly what you want to say in your head, but as soon as you try and put that onto paper, it's difficult, and you find it hard to express these ideas in a way that is clear to someone else. In the first draft, it's easy to completely overlook some important detail that your reader would need to understand the bigger picture. And that's where the editing comes in. So to avoid this confusion, I will do my best to approach my work as if I'm someone new to the topic. And I'll see, does this chain of reasoning make sense? Can I follow it? Is it logical? Does each step lead to the next in a natural way? And these are all questions I'm looking for. If I'm feeling extra resourceful, I'll actually give my piece of writing to someone nearby to read, usually a family member. And most of the time, they won't know much about the topic, and they won't even be interested in the first place. But that's actually a blessing in disguise. It means they'll be able to read it from start to finish with a fresh pair of eyes, and they can give me an objective opinion on whether it was clear to follow, whether they understood everything, and whether I explained something properly. And of course, with that feedback, I can make things clearer and put an end to any, dumb rambling. The third and final thing I look for as I edit is one of the most important things in all of writing. And if your writing lacks this, it's almost pointless to share, and you may as well just keep it as a private journal entry. I make sure my writing is valuable for the reader. Quite a few people email me asking to read their new blog or newsletter, which I'm super grateful for. And they're good, but I see this one common mistake pop up quite a lot. And I used to make this mistake a lot as well. They forget that their writing is supposed to serve the reader and not them. Your writing is not a place for you to stroke your ego or to explore your mind. Like, sure, you can do that, but why should anyone read it? What is in it for the reader? Ultimately, you can do whatever you want in your writing, but with that, it has to also serve someone. For example, you don't care about me. And I mean that genuinely. You don't care about me. And I'm not saying that like it's, some weird emo phase I'm starting, but it's true. If I clicked record and I just talked about my life, like, hey, here's what I'm doing, guys. I'm cooking dinner. I'm going to sleep soon. You don't care. And the only reason you do click on this video is because you think there's something useful for your writing and your routine. And that's totally respectable. And we all do that with every single YouTuber we watch, every single piece of content we consume. This value you offer to your reader can come in many different forms. It could be raw practical advice, or it could be some interesting idea that they can chew on, or it could be useless on paper, but still entertaining. And that in itself is value. So whenever you write and whenever you edit, just make sure that the reader is the priority all the way through. And if there's any parts that are sounding a bit too me, maybe try and adjust that and shift the focus to them. So that's the first round of editing. And in theory, you could stop there. It should be polished enough to release to the world. But I like to take it one step further and do a second wave. But this isn't a repeat of last time, because we're going to add 2 new techniques to this wave of editing that help you scrutinize your work even more closely and with precision. Just like before, I wait a bit until I approach this second edit. But this time, instead of doing it on my computer, I actually do it on my phone. I don't know why or how, but when you read your writing on a different screen to the one that you wrote it on, you just see more, and you see it from this totally different angle. You spot mistakes that you previously missed, and you find parts that maybe deserve a bit more love. I first heard about this technique from Kieran Drew over on X. He's a great writer and he's got a great newsletter, so do check him out. The second technique is to read your work out loud as you edit. I know it's a little weird at first, but trust me, hearing your writing out loud, it again gives you a new dimension to it. Because sometimes things look okay on paper, but as soon as you hear them or speak them, you notice that they're a bit jumbled or clunky, and they just don't sound quite right. And I'd recommend you address those parts and see if you can make them roll off the tongue a bit better. If you can read your piece from start to finish without any sticky points, then that's a good sign that the flow and the cadence of your writing is strong. So that's my routine. I do a final check of everything and I hit publish. And it's not going to be perfect. I know that. In fact, I bet in a month's time I'm going to reread this piece of writing and it will make me cringe because I've improved by then. But that is just the nature of writing and any other skill. You have to put the reps in order to get better. And if you let this sense of false perfectionism hold you back, you will never improve. And you'll never get the chance to make the mistakes that are necessary to grow. If you let the idea of this perfect final draft control you, then you won't get any writing done. And all of those ideas in your head are just going to die with you. And it's a shame. So as always, my emails are open and I read everything, by the way. It might take some time to respond, but I do read everything. So feel free to send me any questions or send me your own experiences and your own routine, because I love to hear that. And of course, the comments are open too. So if you have any insights on how you can maybe improve your writing routine or just to share what you do in your own time, I would love to hear it. It's always fun to read. Thank you so much for watching.